After days of building, refining, and playtesting, you finally uploaded your favorite course, only to get feedback that it was either too hard, too easy, or too stagnant. In this video, I'm going to go over how difficult you should make your course, as well as how to raise that difficulty over time. To make sure we're all on the same page, I'm defining difficulty as the amount of skill required by the player to progress through a game experience. Unless you're making automatic levels, every level you create should have some sort of difficulty. And the skill required to beat said levels can vary heavily. Skill doesn't have to just refer to how quickly a player can press the right buttons either. It could be puzzle solving, memorization, reaction time, and a whole lot of others. So the first step to defining your difficulty curve is actually defining your audience. Who are you making your level for? A target audience is the first step in many different art forms. Take, for instance, this channel. If you're watching this, you're probably an English-speaking 18 to 35-year-old male living in the United States with a passion for video games, particularly Nintendo games, and most importantly, you're creative. You find joy in creating things yourself and sharing them with the rest of the world. If any of that was accurate, that's no accident. I know exactly who I make my content for because I make content that I'm passionate about. The same thing applies to level design. Before you even place the first block, you should have an idea of what the ideal player of your level looks like. They could be a casual or an expert player, proficient in puzzles or swift in speedruns. But once you know your target audience, you should keep in mind those that are slightly less and slightly more skilled than that. Allow someone with a little less skill to learn from your stage, and allow someone with a little more skill to be rewarded for doing things efficiently. Now, that's all great. You know what kind of level you're making and who you're making it for. So how do we make it more or less difficult? And how do we do this fairly without making the player feel cheated? Well, there's no one single answer to this, but a lot of little things to keep in mind while building your course. First, the question, how to make it more or less difficult. This depends on the kind of course you're making. If you're making a platforming level, simply placing platforms further apart or higher up can increase the difficulty. If you're creating a traditional style level, the more enemies in your path, the more difficult it is, and vice versa. However, there's a fine line here between artificial difficulty and designed difficulty. Artificial difficulty can be defined as simply tweaking the numbers or stats of something to increase the difficulty. If, after creating your course, you decide to throw in a few more enemies just to inflate the difficulty, that would be artificial, because the course wasn't inherently designed with those additional enemies in mind. This isn't to say you can't tweak your course after the fact to make it more challenging, but you should keep that word in mind. Challenge. Each enemy or obstacle is a challenge, and those challenges should be intertwined with the core design of the stage. Bumping up the number of enemies might conflict with the design you had originally intended. There's also a few things that don't make a level more challenging but simply make it more tedious. Adding a Bowser fight with infinite power-ups is not a challenge, but just a time waster. No skill is being tested here other than patience. So how do we make a course more challenging without making the level feel unfair? The most important thing to remember is that when creating a game, you must set rules and then follow those rules. Fortunately for us, Nintendo has done most of the legwork here. Green Koopas will walk off ledges, while red Koopas will turn around. Every time. These are basic rules that go unchanged, so when a player comes across a challenge with one of these enemies, they have a basic idea of how they will function. Keeping this in mind, we can create more complex challenges that feel fair even if they are unique to our stage. For instance, if we telegraph that there is a hidden block by marking it with a box, then we should mark every other hidden block this way as well. This makes the level more challenging, because they must avoid hitting the hidden block, while still being fair because it's communicated that it's there. If a box does not have a hidden block, or a hidden block was not marked by a box, this is a deviation from the rule, and the player will feel cheated because they had no way of knowing. When you set a rule like this, the player expects it to be followed. And before I get destroyed in the comments section, yes, hidden blocks that kill the player is bad level design. That doesn't mean it isn't funny, but it's still unfair. I also want to clear up any confusion about troll levels. There are some really interesting and funny troll levels that require you to outsmart their creator, otherwise you get trolled. These have their place and can be great when done right. They're just like puzzle levels, as you should know what to do, just not how to do it. When done wrong, however, they are frustrating, confusing, and unfair. A player shouldn't have to guess on where to go or what to do. That's not a challenge, that's just luck. With all of this in mind, we should have a basic idea of how difficult our stage is and how to adjust this difficulty fairly. So just make sure the first challenge is the easiest and the last is the hardest, right? Kind of. We have to adjust our difficulty in the context of our stage. If you have a single mechanic that doesn't change all too much, by all means, make each challenge harder than the last and call it good. But if you ever add a new mechanic or twist, it's always good practice to lower the difficulty just a bit the first time it's introduced. This gives the player a chance to learn how the mechanic works, and gives them the confidence to tackle the harder variations of it down the line. So in reality, the perfect difficulty curve could look something like this, or even this. It all depends on what you're making. If you'd like to learn more Mario Maker level design, I've got a couple videos for you to the left here. From the basic fundamentals all the way up to the more complicated stuff like this video, I've got you covered. A huge thank you to everyone listed down here for making this video possible, and as always, thanks for watching.